Hey up there. Right, this holiday malarkey's turned out to be quite a lot of hard work. Plenty of jobs that need catching up on around the house, and the bikes were all due for a service. So I've been even busier than usual. Now, among other bikes, I've serviced the Interceptor 650 and the Classic 500, ready for a couple of little trips this summer before summer's finished. And so I've taken the decision to change the Bullet over from semi-synthetic to full synthetic oils. My intention in this video was to explain the reasons for that, explain my findings after making that switch, and hopefully to dispel some myths about synthetic oils. But I've been having some complaints about the length of my videos. People complaining that I go on too long and that I take too much time getting to the point. So I'm going to keep this video very short and sweet. Here we go. It's very important that you get your motorcycle serviced regularly and on time. Make sure that you use a good quality oil and that everything's done correctly. Once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do. Nah, I'm only joking. If you don't like the way that I make my videos, don't bellyache like some little princess, just go and watch something else. Now, the Interceptor 650 and the Classic 500 actually both have very similar mileage on them, despite the fact I've had the Interceptor a year longer than the Classic 500. Now, that's not because the Interceptor is a bad bike, it's a fantastic bike. In fact, in almost every respect, it's a better and more practical bike than the Classic 500. But the Classic 500 has a certain je ne sais quoi, a sort of character that's difficult to define that makes you just keep coming back for more, which is basically what I've been doing, which is why it's got more miles on it than the Interceptor. Now, when I serviced the Interceptor, I noticed two things. One was that, yet again, the tappets didn't really need adjusting, although the OCD in me did dictate that I had to just refine the adjustments a little bit. And the other startling revelation when I changed the oil was that the magnetic sump plug had absolutely nothing on it. It was completely devoid of any metallic particles, despite the fact that it's done about 1,000 miles since its last service. Now, this got me thinking there's two things at play here, or there is in my mind. One is that the Interceptor engine obviously is a much more modern engine. The UCE Classic 500 engine, I think, was designed back in 2008, whereas the Interceptor twin engine is pretty much brand spanking new, so the technology and metallurgy is likely to be improved. But that doesn't answer fully the question as to why there was no metallic particles on the magnet. It's an unusual phenomenon for any engine. Okay, granted, if I'd submitted this oil for some sort of scientific investigation, I'm sure they would have found some metal particles there. But to the naked eye, there was nothing. The Bullet, on the other hand, on both magnetic plugs, because it has two, one in the filter housing and one in the main sump plug, had the usual to be expected fuzz of metal particles. Nothing to worry about, perfectly normal, especially when you consider that its last service was its first service at 300 miles, and these engines are well known for taking some time to fully break in. So the engine components are still going to continue shedding particles of metal. The break-in period is essentially a period of accelerated wear, which is a good thing initially, but obviously at some point the engine is fully break-in, and then all you're doing is you're actually wearing the engine away, to the point in the fullness of time where components will either need to be replaced or the engine will become unserviceable. So at the point where you decide the engine has been broken in enough, it's a good idea to arrest that wear as much as you possibly can, to slow it down so that you get the longest possible service life from your engine. And the obvious ways of achieving this is A, to treat the bike with respect, and B, to use the highest quality, highest performance oil you can get your hands on. Now, when I talk about a high performance oil, I don't mean an oil that somehow magically makes your bike go faster. I'm talking about an oil that performs its task better. An oil that reduces friction in your engine components to the highest level, because the least friction there is, the less wear there's going to be. The less friction there is, the more power the engine is going to be able to release, although that's probably not going to be noticeable. The lower the friction, the lower the fuel consumption, and ultimately the less friction there is, the less heat is produced, which is important with modern lean burn engines, especially when they are air cooled. Now, the best way to achieve this is to use a highest quality fully synthetic oil, preferably ester based, that you can afford. But people are often held back from doing this by the various myths and legends that surround modern synthetic oil. So let's just quickly go through some of those before we get down to the sort of nuts and bolts of the situation. The first thing that I often hear said, and I've seen it in the comments section quite regularly, is that on a bike like the Bullet or similar bikes, there's no point using a high quality synthetic. You're just wasting your money because it's not a high performance bike, it doesn't need it. And that you're better off just buying the cheapest motor oil you can find and doing an oil change, I don't know, every 1,000 miles or every 1,500 miles. And that will basically give you the same effect for less money. Well, that's rubbish. Cheap oil is cheap oil for a reason. It uses cheaper base stock, cheaper additive packages, or maybe even miss out some additive packages altogether. So right from the moment you put that oil into your engine, it will be giving your engine less protection than a fully synthetic. It will also deteriorate faster. So even if you change that engine oil every 1,000 miles, you're going to see accelerated engine wear compared to a high quality synthetic. In fact, many high quality synthetic oils will still outperform a basic mineral oil or semi-synthetic when it's new, straight out of the bottle, when those full synthetics are at the end of their service lives and are ready to be changed. So from that perspective alone, it makes more sense to be using a high quality fully synthetic. Trust me, the extra money you spend on these types of oils is a very astute investment compared to the early and very expensive repairs that your bike is likely to need due to you using low quality oils. Now, another complaint that I often hear is that synthetic oil damages seals and causes engine leaks. That's complete rubbish. This harks back to the 1980s when full synthetics first appeared on the market, and people were sticking it in 10-year-old engines. Now, it's not that it wasn't compatible with those engines, it's that those engines have been run with inferior oils for years that had created a lot of deposit build-ups inside the engines. Now, the truth of the matter is those leaks already existed because, those gaskets and seals were past the service life. They were ready to go at that stage. But the crud build-up inside the engine from the breakdown of conventional oils was basically plugging the hole. High-quality synthetics have very high cleaning properties that keep the inside of your engine very clean, and they will also remove any dirt build-up that was already there, which back in the 80s resulted in it cleaning out all the old crud, revealing the leaks, and, with the inevitable consequences. Right, time is marching on and those petulant princesses are going to be twitching and eyeing up the keyboard, so I'll quickly go through the other points that are raised. One of the big ones is that once you've started using fully synthetic in your bike, you can't go back to a mineral oil if that's what the manufacturer suggests, or a semi-synthetic because some sort of voodoo will occur and they won't mix. Even if you flush the engine out first, Now, I'll be honest, I've got absolutely no idea where this has come from. Synthetic oil is made from the same mineral base stock as any other oil. It's the same substance, it's just refined and chemically altered into a higher performance state. Synthetic lubricant is not some unique chemical compound that can only be found on other planets. It's derived from exactly the same mineral oil as any other oil. It's more expensive because it goes through much more refinement and chemical alteration processes than standard oil to provide a longer lasting, more stable, higher performance lubricant. So it is compatible and can even be mixed with other types of oil, although you wouldn't want to do that because you'd basically be diluting the superior properties of your synthetic with a low grade oil. Now, I'm not going to go through the full list of old wives' tales, but we'll just finish off with the misnomer that synthetic oil in some motorcycles will cause glazing of the parts and they will cause problems with your clutch. Glazing of parts, if you use synthetic in a bike like the Classic 500, where it's normally recommended you use a semi-synthetic, is a possibility, but I'm not convinced. I think if you use it too early, it is going to considerably delay the breaking in process because it's slowing down the overall wear of your engine components, which is why I've waited until the bike's got 2,000 miles on it before making the switch, to allow that braking process to finish as completely as possible. Now, I know some people recommend that they're not fully broken until they've done 3,000 or 4,000 miles. That may be the case, but I had to make a decision at where the cut-off point was, and I decided that in my case it's going to be 2,000 miles. As for synthetics affecting the operation of your clutch, that's only going to happen if you choose the wrong product, i.e. a synthetic oil which is designed for a dry clutch rather than a wet clutch. I've known people that have done it, and I'm going to say no more on the subject. So, I said at the beginning of the video that the lack of metallic particles on the sump magnet in the Interceptor, I put that down to two things, but I only told you what one of those things were. Obviously, the other factor that you may have already guessed because of what I've been talking about is that the Interceptor uses fully synthetic oil, and that is recommended by Royal Enfield. And I've been using Silcolene's Pro 4 fully synthetic ester based oil, and I think that that has had a huge part to play in the lack of those metallic particles. Now, for the Classic 500 UCE engine, Royal Enfield recommend a semi-synthetic 15W50. In fact, to be specific, and I'm reading this from the manual now, it recommends a 15W50 API SL Jasso MA ester based semi-synthetic oil. Now, this represents a minimum requirement for safe operation of that engine. That is what I'd used at the first service, but already at 1700 miles I'd started to notice some deterioration, especially during rapid down changes with the gearbox. You know, when you've had to stop unexpectedly and you've had to crash down through the box to get it into first or neutral, ready to set off again. Just over the last 200 or 300 miles I've noticed that the gearbox seemed to be getting a bit mixed up and it wasn't going into second and first smoothly. It took a bit of messing about at times. Whilst it doesn't mean that your oil is completely spent, this is an indication that your oil is on its way out. And this UCE engine does burn particularly hot, which gives any oil a hard time. Now, Silcolene is my bike oil brand of choice. I've been using it for decades, but that doesn't mean that it has to be your brand of choice. I actually spoke to the boffins at Silcolene about this very subject a year ago, and they recommended at the time that at the first service I should switch to a fully synthetic. Their official view is that for maximum engine protection with modern hot burning lean burn engines, fully synthetic is the only way really to go. Just about all reputable oil brands will have a product selector, and the Silcoline product selector recommends two oils for the Royal Enfield Classic 500. One is the ester-based semi-synthetic recommended by Royal Enfield, and this is what I chose for the first service in order to allow the engine to fully break in before making the switch. Now, they also have listed on their website for the Royal Enfield Classic 500 their fully synthetic Pro 4 ester-based lubricant, and it's important to note that the parameters of both these oils exactly match those dictated by Royal Enfield. So both oils are fully compatible with the Classic 500. So the Pro 4 fully synthetic fully meets all the specifications dictated by Royal Enfield, but it is of a much higher quality, it's more stable, it will last longer, and it has a higher performance than the semi-synthetic which is recommended or suggested. So on this 2,000 mile service, that's what I put in the bike. There's no sleight of hand going on here. Some have been decanted into a jug in order to pre-soak the new oil filter before installing it. And I put in 2.2 litres of brand new cherry flavoured Silcoline Pro 4 15W50 fully synthetic lubricant. Actually, I shouldn't have said that. It's not cherry flavoured and you shouldn't drink it because engine oil will probably kill you. But, you know, it's red, so... Anyway, moving on. What happened next? Did the bike self-destruct? No, it didn't. Did it start leaking oil from every seal and gasket? No, it didn't. Did the engine light come on saying that it had detected a problem somewhere in the operation of the engine? No, it didn't do that either. In fact, I rode the bike really hard for 60 miles. As you've seen here, a lot of motorway work and a lot of work in heavy traffic. Now, I hear people comment quite frequently about the placebo effect of an oil change, where everything seems to run better and nicer and smoother, when all you've actually done is just change the oil. The thing is with the Classic 500 is that Royal Enfield have pretty short oil change intervals of about 3,000 miles, and the reason for that is that because this bike runs particularly hot, it wrecks oil very quickly. So by 1,500 miles the oil will start to be deteriorating, and that deterioration will be more marked in a semi-synthetic than it will be in a fully synthetic. That's why I was starting to have problems with rapid down changes. The oil was still doing its job admirably, but it was past its best. It had entered into that state of deterioration, and it had in fact started to show some suck content. It was starting to turn black, which is normal, but it's a sure sign that that engine oil has been well and truly cooked. A fully synthetic handles this far better than the mineral content of a semi-synthetic. So whereas I will concede there is an element of a placebo effect when you change your oil, it's not all placebo effect. There are some practical differences that you do notice. First of all, gear changes up or down. No matter how much I rushed the gearbox, it was flawless. The clutch definitely felt a little bit sweeter and smoother, and although my particular mule is not a vibration monster, it did seem to have quietened the engine down just a little bit more. I didn't detect a sudden surge in additional power, but I didn't expect to. And I think the proof of the pudding here is going to be in how long this state lasts. 1,700 miles with the semi-synthetic, and as I've said, there were signs that that semi-synthetic was past its best and on its way out. It was still doing its job, but it was deteriorating. I'll give you a report in a year's time as to just how well this fully synthetic has held up. And it will be interesting to see at the next oil change whether there is any evidence that it is substantially reduced wear on those sump magnets. Now, when I was researching this video, I asked a lot of fairly knowledgeable people what their opinion was of using a fully synthetic in the Classic 500, and it surprised me how many advised me not to do it, even though they couldn't really give me any evidence as to why I shouldn't. It does seem to me to be an opinion born out of sort of fiction and myth rather than any real evidence. I trusted Silkoline's advice on this issue with the Classic 500, and it would certainly seem to me on the face of it that that trust was well founded. Can I just make it clear, I don't see using fully synthetic oil as an excuse for longer oil change intervals. You should still change your oil at the intervals recommended by your motorcycle manufacturer. Using fully synthetic simply ensures that you have optimal lubrication during that period. Hopefully I have dispelled some myths here and perhaps just given you enough information to make an informed decision if you want to do something towards making your engine last longer. Once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this video and found it useful, please help me out by leaving a like, and if you're not a subscriber, subscribing to this channel. And remember, once you've subscribed, if you don't hit the notification bell and don't make sure that your notifications are enabled, you won't be notified when I upload a new video. I am, of course, going to be back next Friday because I'm still sort of taking a break. So until then, ride safely and I'll see you soon.